I think Thom Tillis got a little bit tired of the game. I think like every senator has to be a warrior, and more importantly, they have to be a happy warrior. And I don't think he was a happy warrior anymore.
The governor has been clear he's giving it strong consideration. He's going to make a decision this summer. He's going to let everybody know as soon as he gets to that decision.
But the biggest change in a Roy Cooper versus Thom Tillis race is that now Thom Tillis will not be the lead story in the U.S. Senate race. Roy Cooper will be. And I think he will face scrutiny that he's never faced before.
Hey everybody, welcome on in to Tying It Together with Tim Boyum. I am Tim Boyum here with producer John McHugh as always. How are you, John?
I'm doing good. Little time away. Nice to refresh. Nice to be back, though.
Yeah, well, it's going to be, if we thought we were going to get a quiet summer, we're not going to get that with the U.S. Senate race. I don't know about you, but I normally don't like to focus on the horse race stuff about who's in, who's out, who's up in the polls, but I have to admit, I'm pretty fascinated with this Senate race.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially at this stage in a race, usually it's just rumors and it's not worth getting worked up over, but it's interesting. It's very interesting now.
Yeah, and the potential of like Laura Trump versus Roy Cooper is, I mean, that's some red meat right there, and it could bring a lot of money in. But if not, then there's a lot of big questions on both sides, I think.
Yeah, I mean, with Tillis out, it could be a free-for-all. It could be, on the Republican side of things, it could be pretty much over and done with as soon as Donald Trump sends out a post on Truth Social. And, on the other side, if Roy Cooper decides not to run, that's wide open.
Yeah, wide open with a lot of people potentially. So when I heard this news, I wanted to get these guys on that are our guests today. Sitting in the hot seat, Morgan Jackson from Nexus Strategies. He reps Roy Cooper, so yes, we'll ask him about that. He reps Josh Stein, the current governor, has helped rep presidential candidates in the state. On the other side from the indie group, Jonathan Feltz, he has repped Ted Budd, the current Republican as well. And as a here right at the beginning, has a fancy little mustache, and we'll ask him about that origin. So let's get right to it. Before we get down to business, I want to start with you and something fun, since we're in video now with this podcast.
Fun, okay.
Where is the origin of this mustache?
I'd always liked the handlebar mustache. Every November and the whole No Shave November thing, I would start doing it. I let it go for about 3 months with the American Bankers Association when I was working there. And in January, right before the North Carolina bankers were coming to visit, actually, my boss slipped around the corner about 5:30 the day before. He said, so now that state agencies are coming to visit us, you're going to shave that, right? So I actually started doing it in COVID. And then when I took the mask off, several people said, like my daycare, my kids' daycare, the teacher said, oh, we like your mustache. I was like, oh, well, I've had it. Oh, you're just now seeing it. Oh, okay. And then the first couple times my wife and I went out, we got several compliments on it. She looked at me over dinner and she said, you're never shaving that, are you? And I said, yeah, we'll see. I hadn't really thought about it, but it seems to be going well.
She hasn't made you shave it?
Not yet. It's popular with bartenders. I don't remember my name, but you got the problem is you got to tip well if you got a mustache like this, because then they will remember you one way or the other.
You gonna get one like that?
I haven't been shaving for 2 years, working on my beard. I hadn't quite got it there yet. So
close.
Yeah.
It took me a road trip and 12 months in Afghanistan. So.
I'm probably not going to do that in order to get a mustache. I'll go clean shaven. That's my thing.
All right. So when Senator Tillis dropped out of the race, before we got into it, right, technically, you were two of the first people I thought of. You won a recent U.S. Senate race, and you've been involved in one and may be involved in one soon. We'll see about that. But what was your reaction, Morgan?
So, we started hearing the rumors, I think, like everybody, coming out of D.C. a couple hours ahead of time. And I think there was I don't know, maybe not. And, this was after, you got to remember that he had taken a stand and said, I'm gonna vote against the reconciliation bill, and Trump had gone after him. I guess it was Saturday night all over and just blasted him. And I don't know that I believed it at the time, but it also made sense. Listen, I think my view of the world was Tillis was the weakest incumbent in the country if you're a Democrat or Republican. And that's just the truth. I mean, empirical data says that. And I think if you are in a place where swing voters view you the way they do with Thom Tillis, meaning upside down in your numbers, and you're now in open warfare with the person who determines whether or not you're going to win your primary, it makes total sense. There was not a path forward. And whether that was a political decision, a personal decision, I think is the Tillis camp says, but it's a smart political decision. There just wasn't a path forward for Thom Tillis in a primary or a general. And I think after Saturday night, I think the chances of a primary were next to nothing being the nominee. He was going to lose the primary way before he was going to lose the general election.
But it wasn't that long ago that there's discussion about whether Trump was just going to end this and endorse Tillis because he might have the best chance in a general. I mean, things can change quickly.
I think the difference is, and Feltz, I'm curious if you have the same opinion or a different one, is I think in the first Trump term, I think there were more reins, and I think he was thinking more about how we keep control. I think in the second Trump term, there's no quarter, and he doesn't care. And it is about we can elect whoever we want, and I'm not going to take any dissonance in my party at all. And it feels very much like you could see how Tillis got the endorsement, even when Trump, berated him on every stage in 2020 when they were both on the ballot. He'd make fun of him, and he would go out there and say, Thom Tillis is here, and the MAGA crowd would boo. And he said, I know he hadn't always been with us, but I think he's learned his lesson, don't you? And he would say that again and try to embarrass a sitting U.S. senator who's running for re-election on the ballot with you. I don't think Trump's distaste for Tillis has ever I think that's always been very clear.
What do you think, Jonathan?
I think a couple of things. I mean, first off, I think Thom Tillis has been a great senator for North Carolina. I think he's been a great speaker for North Carolina. I don't think there's been a bigger warrior for economic growth in North Carolina than Thom Tillis during his time, both in the state legislature right up till now in the U.S. Senate. I had a client who was involved in a big public policy debate here in North Carolina, could bring more than $1 billion in the North Carolina economy. We called Senator Tillis about it. He never hesitated. He immediately reached out to Pete Hegseth, found him over at Munich. They were at the Munich conference together. Immediately texted the president, and so he's been great on that front. I think Thom Tillis got a little bit tired of the game. I think like every senator has to be a warrior, and more importantly, they have to be a happy warrior. And I don't think he was a happy warrior anymore. I don't think he liked the way the game had changed since Donald Trump had taken over. And it's very rare that I do a sports analogy versus a comic book analogy. But you look at Dabo down at Clemson. He said, "I don't like the transfer portal. I don't think that's the way college football should be." Well, that's great. He's standing on principle, and now he's like middle of the pack versus being a national championship contender. I think Tillis had kind of the same challenge right now in the current environment, and that's not just related just to Trump, but it's just deal makers and compromise and people that want to work with the other side. That's not popular in either party right now, and that's just what the political reality is.
But Jonathan, did you not get the sense even a few months ago that they were going to try to work this out? That Tillis was going to try to follow along, and Trump was probably going to endorse him eventually, even though some of his supporters wouldn't like it, and they would just try to move forward? Yeah,
I think this is a very common thing in Washington, D.C. This is an insider's podcast. I'll say it's an insider's knowledge here. Oftentimes, the two principals, they get along just fine. But the problem becomes at the staff level. And I think some of the people around Donald Trump really did not like Thom Tillis, caused him some problems, caused Tillis to lash out a few times. I think if Thom Tillis, like last December, had gone to Donald Trump and said, "Hey, I'm with you most of the time. I need your endorsement. Will you endorse me? I've defended your record." I think it would have gotten the endorsement. But Thom Tillis chose not to do that.
So, Morgan, does this make things, are you excited? Indifferent? Does this make things easier or harder for Democrats?
I think both, actually. And Feltz would say the same thing. I've gotten a lot of calls from a lot of reporters nationally and in state who say, well, what does this mean for Democrats, regardless of who their candidate is? And I said, listen, I think it goes both ways. I think, again, I talked about Tillis's inherent weaknesses in the ballot box. It just, the numbers are what they are, and I think Thom Tillis was very vulnerable. But also, to credit Thom Tillis, a guy who's won 2 tough races in North Carolina, and you both know this. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. North Carolina's a hard state to win. It just is. It's a hard nut to crack. It's a big state. It's a very expensive state, and so when I think about it, I think whoever is now the going to be the new nominee for the Republican side is somebody that has never won a statewide race, most likely. At least none of the names that are bandied about have never won a race statewide, but more importantly, aren't battle tested in the fact that they've ever won a general election that had had swing voters that made the difference. If you're a member of Congress in North Carolina right now as a Republican, and the 3 or 4 that are actively apparently considering the Senate race, they've only had to win a primary because the districts, the way they are so overwhelmingly Republican drawn by the legislature, is You just got to be the furthest to the right to win the primary. But those folks, yeah, they've won a general election, but it's none of them have been competitive. And I think it's a different thing to have to change your view and your focus. So on each level, if you understand what I'm saying, I think it changes the trajectory of the race. I don't know that it means I still think Democrats, this is their best pickup in the country in 26, the best chance for a pickup. That did not change with Thom Tillis exiting the race. The map is what it is. And I do think being able to know that as Democrats that we're going to go up against somebody who's never been battle tested in a general election, in a tough general election in North Carolina, is a good thing for us ultimately.
I guess the reason I ask is that I think a lot of people would say, look, there's a more likelihood that they're going to get a much more Trump-aligned, harder right type candidate.
Right.
And Tillis may have taken some unaffiliated or suburban voters that person may not.
Listen, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think if you look at the big ugly bill is ultimately if a member of Congress or even Lara Trump as a potential nominee would have voiced major support for cutting people off of Medicaid. And Thom Tillis, by the way, I don't care who the candidate's going to be, is going to be example number one. Video of Tillis saying, I can't vote for this. It's going to lose 1 million people in North Carolina health care. And either if you're a Republican member of Congress, you just voted for that bill, or if you're Lara Trump, you've been championing the bill. And you've got Thom Tillis, your existing U.S. Senator, who's a Republican, saying, this is bad for our state. We can't vote. I can't support this. He's going to be Exhibit A on any Republican running in next November.
How does this change things for Republicans, or to be determined?
It's not to be determined. I think the reality is Republicans are in a better spot now than they were with Tillis as the nominee. I mean, again, I like Thom Tillis. I've supported Thom Tillis. But the reality was we were going to have a nominee who literally could not campaign at any GOP event except maybe some official NCGOP function that's very limited crowd. But any county party function, there was a legit chance he'd be booed off the stage because he was so unpopular with the base. Now, a lot of the base, they couldn't tell you why he was unpopular. Because his voting record is not totally different than that of Ted Budd, since Ted Budd's been in the U.S. Senate. But the reality was he had a real base problem. We talk about those 2 or 3% you can get with the independents. I mean, there was a legit problem that Thom Tillis was going to lose those 2 to 3% with conservative base Republicans who just would either vote Republican or not come out and vote in the general election, because he was kind of a throwback more to and I was part of this world back in the day, but the establishment Republican world, the country club Republican world. Whether that's an accurate description of Tillis or not, that was the perception. And in politics, perception is reality. I think we've got a lot of good candidates who are looking at it. I think Lara Trump, if she wants the nomination, it's hers for the taking. I think she'd have a great opportunity here in North Carolina. She's a great public speaker, and people want to write her off as like, well, that's why she is good with crowds. But the reality is she's been campaigning here really aggressively since 2015. For her father-in-law in 2018, it was for Ted Budd and other members with tough races or potentially challenging races. In 2020, she was actually going to a lot of the places that Thom Tillis couldn't go to. And thankfully, Ted Budd was going to those places as well. And that's kind of our little jump start in 2022. But she connects well with the voters here in North Carolina. They see her as one of us. They see her as a hometown girl. When NC State goes to the Final Four in 24, when Lara Trump cheered them on, it wasn't a politician trying to jump on the bandwagon. It was a home state girl cheering on her alma mater, that type mentality. I think Michael Whatley, if he wants to run, I think he brings immediate gravitas to the table. He's connected to the grassroots. He was a very aggressive, active state party chairman, comparable to Anderson in terms of her. I mean, she's got youth and vitality on her side. I guess Michael had a lot of Diet Cokes on his side as far as the caffeine. I don't think I've had a single conversation with him in the past, 8 years where it wasn't from his pickup truck driving to the next event type thing. But as importantly, in this day and age we live in, Democrats, dating back to Thom Tillis' first race in 2014, they outspend Republicans on the campaigns, on the candidate side by a considerable margin. They've got a great fundraising mechanism with Act Blue, I should say. And with Michael Whatley, he's got good connections to the North Carolina donors, but as importantly to the national donors. He won't bring parity, especially if it's Roy Cooper, but one-to-one parity, but he'll be able to put us in a better position from day one than anyone else can. And then after that, we've got some strong candidates in the congressional delegation. Pat Harrigan obviously has made no secret he's looking at it. I think Brad Knott would be a great potential candidate, and there's other potential candidates out there.
Morgan, which one of those scares you the most?
I think there are pluses and minuses with all of them, and I think the reality is if it's not Lara Trump, everybody will start with basically zero name recognition. And I think the challenge, the benefit, what Democrats get is, and we did this with Mark Robinson in June of last year, which is Mark Robinson came out of the primary extremely well known by Republican primary voters, but he was completely unknown to the rest of the electorate. And so what we did was introduce him. We introduced Mark Robinson and the version that we wanted voters to see up front, and that's what they knew about him. They knew the pull your skirt down comment rather than this guy was a rising star and all of the things that the Republican faithful sort of knew. And so I think there's that. I think with Laura Trump, not having been a North Carolina resident for a number of years,
it's like Elizabeth Dole kind of all over.
It does feel like sandbagging in. And I think it'll work fine for the Republican primary, because I think whoever Trump wants is going to get the nomination. I think it's a different thing when you tell 10 million North Carolinians one person's going to decide who your senator is versus you. And I do think part of her challenge is going to be just logistics. She passed on the Senate race in Florida, which would have been an easier general election, obviously. And
she lives there, by the way. Her kids are
lives in Florida, and I don't know that she's looking forward to paying North Carolina income tax by leaving Florida and moving to North Carolina. But
wait a minute, are you
Roy Cooper drove them up so high?
Are you advocating for no income tax here?
No, I'm advocating that. Come on, Laura, we'd love to have your income tax dollars pay for health care in North Carolina. So what I'd say is I think there are positives and negatives to each of them. I still think that Democrats are on pretty equal footing right now. Listen, there's no question, and I know you're about to get to this, but if Governor Cooper runs, Democrats will start with an advantage in this race, name ID, financial advantage, et cetera. But I think an unknown Democrat or someone, there are a number of people who want to run if the governor ultimately declines to. I think all have a real chance to win.
Do you think Laura Trump not living here and living here for quite a while would make a difference? We mentioned Elizabeth Dole. That was in the early and mid 2000s that she ran. She did win the first go round, and I don't think it necessarily impacted her a lot.
It's a little hump she'd have to get across. She'd have to have a good message and have to have a really aggressive campaign, getting around to all 100 counties, that sort of thing. I think also with her 100% name ID from the very get-go, I mean, that Senate campaign would spend a lot more on logistics and advance and operations than what the traditional Senate campaign would, just because of all the things that go into having a quasi-celebrity drop in the state. But I don't think it would be as big of an issue as what Democrats want you to believe it would be. I think it would actually be comparable to Elizabeth Dole in that, Elizabeth Dole, a lot of her achievements that she was known for in North Carolina were done up in Washington, D.C., and they were great achievements, to be very clear. It's, appreciate Josh Stein and the legislature and others, having Elizabeth Dole Day a few weeks ago that honors someone who really was a trailblazer. But I think, again, Laura Trump, what a lot of folks don't appreciate is she spent a lot more time here campaigning than what a lot of folks realize. Every one of her rallies were not covered by the press. Every one of her rallies were not 1,000-person rallies. Sometimes they were like, 25, 30, 50 people at a chicken stew or whatever the case might be. And so she's been here a lot more and been in a lot of other places and a lot of the remote corners in North Carolina where you had to go to because we needed to maximize turnout in those little spots to offset the turnout in the big spots, like the big urban areas where the Democrats were running up to score. And so she's been a good warrior for the GOP here in North Carolina.
Do you think, is it a matter of Trump being a kingmaker here? There are some people I know out there that believe he should stay out of it and that there should be a full primary process.
How is Pat McCrory doing these days? I knew that'd get a laugh out of Morgan.
Well played. Mark Robinson was a primary too now.
I saw that. I did see that. I think.
By the way, how about Tillis's troll of Mark Robinson in a tweet?
Yeah, no love lost between those two.
Holy cow!
Between Tillis and the mini soldier.
Mini soldier comment on Twitter. Wow.
I think.
X, I'm supposed to call it.
I think Robinson wants the primary and the Pat Harrigan seats. What I think he wants.
His voice has been out there a little.
Yeah, he's
more,
been out there a lot.
Right?
That's a seat. Supposedly people talked to him about back in 2022, 2023, before the governor's race.
You don't think he'd really do it though, right?
I think once you've been in the limelight, once you're out of the limelight, you realize you kind of like that limelight. You can ask our good friend Mark Walker about that.
Okay, so back to the question before I got totally distracted. Is Trump making up the mind here that it doesn't matter what anybody thinks? And do you think it comes in the next couple months?
Yeah, I think it'll be sooner than that. I think it'll be in the next month or so. And I think that, I think Donald Trump has campaigned across the country. He's campaigned across the state. Every president, they've got their capital. My old boss, George W. Bush, he famously said, "I've earned my political capital. I'm going to use it." When he went at his second term, unfortunately, we used it on Social Security reform, which crashed and burned, which we'd all be a lot better off if it hadn't crashed and burned, but I digress. But I think Donald Trump's using his political capital just like any chief executive and any president would do.
What do you think about that? If it was someone on the Democratic side that was sort of playing kingmaker, is it just the reality of the situation?
I think it is, but I do think there are a number of people who don't like it, and I think more importantly, what they're not going to like is that Trump is only going to be for somebody who is going to be his puppet and the person that will do everything he tells them to do. I think
isn't that the lesson from Tillis dropping out though?
It is, but I think if you're going to tell me that we're going to have a MAGA guy running statewide, that's not a bad thing for Democrats because there are a lot of swing voters. And especially, listen, Trump Trump is one thing, but when you look at the rest of the Republican Party and how they're viewed, Trump is different. Voters view him differently. He's more well known. That's baked in. Whether you like him or hate him, it's baked in. But the challenge for other Republicans is how to govern and campaign like Trump when you don't have that sort of star appeal or that universal name ID. And Trump is very Teflon when it comes to actual things sticking to him with voters. But I would tell you, the thing Trump campaigned on, I said this, and Jonathan has heard me say it before Tillis dropped out, was I think Democrats make a mistake by focusing on Trump all the time because the truth of the matter is Trump won. That game's over. But I think all of the things that Trump has campaigned on, which is I'm going to make prices go down on day one, that this economy is going to be better because I'm president than it was. And we're 8 months into this presidency and prices on working families are only higher every single day. And Trump's erratic behavior on tariffs is directly juicing high prices. And there's nothing that happens in this big ugly bill that is going to provide people health care. It's going to take it away from them. And so I say that to say that might not stick to Trump, but that's going to stick to the Republican who is not as Teflon that runs for the Senate, that has to answer those questions to swing voters who are concerned about losing their health care, concerned about the fact that everything they purchase is more expensive than it was 12 months ago. And Trump, I'm going to lower them on day one. I'm going to lower prices on day one. And that's not happened. So you're going to have to hold. Trump may not be able to be held accountable electorally, but the Republican Party and the Republican nominee will be.
All right, so let's get to it. You knew I was going to ask you about it. Former Governor Roy Cooper. Bring him on in. I'm just kidding. I wish you could bring him.
He announced yesterday. I don't know what you're doing, Tim, on this podcast.
Well, then tell us what he announced. Come on.
It was on a new social media network that we founded. So it may not, maybe nobody subscribed to it. No, listen, all seriousness, the governor has been clear. He's giving it strong consideration. He's going to make a decision this summer. He's going to let everybody know as soon as he gets to that decision. He's getting, as you can imagine, the poor guy can't go to the grocery store without people saying, you have got to run for the United States Senate, and please, and please, and please.
It's probably just weird for him going to the grocery store again.
I'm sure.
He didn't have to do it for 8 years.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I saw him at Publix a time or two.
No.
When he's governor. Yeah,
Did
you really?
I'll defend him there. Yeah.
That's the thing about Roy Cooper is like he's just the realest person you know, and there's not a lot of pomp and circumstance. He's puts on his backpack.
Governor Stein told me he still goes home and power washes sometimes. It's like a stress relief. Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It is. But anyway, the governor's is strongly considering is going to make a decision soon in this summer. And so until that time, I think what we hear from most Democrats is we want to give you the time to make the decision. We want you to run. If you don't, and there are a number of candidates who said, I want to consider it if you don't, but I want to give you the time to make it. Because Democrats universally believe him to be the strongest candidate. I think even in some polling numbers that were released yesterday, it shows him even not being in office for 7 months, that his favorables, his traits and things like that look very good. And voters still have a very fond view of Roy Cooper. So
what I find interesting about this decision is, I remember asking him for felt like a decade about whether he was going to run for governor or not. And it was always, the time's not right. He seems very cautious about his decision making. Maybe cautious isn't the right word, but
it's a decade and a half.
And then, it was never the right time. And then it was, and I'm not so sure he desperately wants to run for Senate, but I do think there's this pressure among Democrats, particularly nationally, that they need him and almost would guilt him into running. Is there a lot of national pressure on him to be the savior?
Oh, sure. Well, but part of it is Democrats nationally are looking for hope, and they're looking for. We had a rough election cycle. I mean, you and I have talked about this extensively. We had a good cycle in North Carolina, but nationally it was largely because of Trump. It was everybody's been sort of a bit in depression and head in the sand and other things during that period of time. And what we're seeing is Democrats are now finally 8 months later starting to get excited and get in fighting mode and things like that. And they want to field the best candidates ever because they want to make sure that we can take back control of either the House or Senate or both nationally. And so there's a lot of, it's easy to do the math and say there's no question Roy Cooper gives us the best chance to win if you're a lay Democrat or a reporter or an activist or a donor. And so they're giving him space to make that decision. But yeah, it's people really want him to run.
Can you give us any insight? Is it hard for him, dealing with this all the time or wrestling with the decision? Or
so he I
don't want to put you in a bad spot. I'm just curious.
No,
it's a hard decision, right?
It is a hard decision. The thing I'll tell you about Roy Cooper and that I have always, and I think everybody's worked for Cooper, and I've worked for him for along with a lot of others for over 2 decades. I'll tell you, you got to trust the man's judgment. Is that he has an impeccable sense of timing. He doesn't make, and interestingly enough, he's never made political decisions about why to run for an office or not. The timing has not. And everybody, I think smart politicians know it's like the stock market. You can't pick timing. You can jump in today and a year from now, you have no idea what the world is going to look like.
Today.
Right. And much less next week. And so, but Cooper has always come to these decisions, whether to run or to not run, in a very personal way about how it affects his family, how he wants to serve, what's the best way he can do things for the state and the country. And this is no different. And he's going to make the right decision, whatever it is. And I have complete confidence in that, is because he always has. I've laughed over the years, he was, and Feltz, I can't remember if we ever talked about this, but even as you go back to 1994, Tim Valentine, who was a member of Congress, said, I'm not going to run again. And it was his hometown member of Congress. Yeah. He said, I want to endorse you from my announcement speech and stand up beside me. And, Cooper's kids were really young at that point. And he said, it's not the time for me to go to D.C. And it turned out to be 1994. He wouldn't have gone to D.C. anyway, as bad as that year was. And so that was not a political decision. It was a personal one. But I trust Roy Cooper to make the right decision at the right time. And he will.
What do you think about the potential running against Cooper? I've heard online, particularly from some of the further right folks, I guess, that all this stuff about being locked down still from COVID, and then Eastern North Carolina hurricane relief. Are those winners, do you think, to go against Cooper on?
Well, first my joke, and that is Roy Cooper suffering what every Democrat in North Carolina is suffering from, and that is vast intimidation from Wiley Nickel, because everyone's really fired up about his candidacy.
By the way, for the listeners and viewers, he's already in the race.
He's already announced about 9 times. People keep forgetting.
Former member of Congress.
So I think with Roy Cooper, I think that, first off, if I were him, and I don't say this in a partisan way, I say this sincerely in terms of, he has served his state, he has served his country, he has served his party. He's done what he set out to do, that is be governor. Going from governor to senator, going from attorney general to senator, he spent 24 years as the chief executive. And now, the only body more dysfunctional in the U.S. Senate would be that of the U.S. House, and that's either Democrat or Republican rule. He goes from being the chief executive to having to negotiate with like 99 other people who think they should be president. And that's not where I would want to be at his stage of his career. And I don't mean that in a snarky way or a bad way or anything like that, but that's just my personal thoughts. But the biggest change in a Roy Cooper versus Thom Tillis race is that now Thom Tillis will not be the lead story in the U.S. Senate race. Roy Cooper will be. And I think he will face scrutiny that he's never faced before.
Unless it's Laura Trump.
Yes, that's totally fair, totally true. But I think he'll face a lot more scrutiny and a lot more money being spent against him than he's ever faced before. Now, he's faced a lot of money before, and it's not intimidated him, and he's won. So that's not to say that he could not win or anything like that. But I think that it would be a lot more pressure than what he's faced before, and he's got to look within his gut and say, do I really want to do this or not? Because, and to be clear, if he doesn't do it, he is still a elder statesman, and I don't mean elder in a bad way, but yeah, still a great eminence, if you will.
A lot of us are elder these days.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Trust me, I feel that. But yeah, he's a great eminence for the Democrat Party, both statewide and nationally, and so I don't think he loses any prominence if he doesn't run.
All right, just real quick, a few more Democrats. So if Cooper doesn't run, what do you think some of the Democrats can turn to? I know this is a delicate question asking you because you're a consultant in that world, but some people have mentioned Jeff Jackson, who's Attorney General. Although I've heard behind the scenes that he's hesitant to do it because he just got into that position. Don Davis has come up out of nowhere recently, a congressman who's would be in a very tight race anyways in Congress in northeastern North Carolina. Wiley Nichols already, and Dan McCready, who was part of that race in 2018, the Mark Harris race, has been sort of mentioned out there as well. Where do you think Dems would turn if Cooper didn't get in?
Listen, I think there's the one thing about
and others that we haven't mentioned yet.
Sure, yeah, and I've talked to a lot of folks who are not on that list who are seriously interested.
Have you, Morgan?
I have. Everybody's interested in what the governor's going to do. So it is. I will say that I feel very confident Democrats will be able to field a strong candidate if it's not Cooper. I think obviously nobody comes in with the built-in name ID, which is so critically hard and frankly expensive to get in this state, especially a favorable, unfavorable split the way he has.
Jeff Jackson probably the closest to that.
Yeah,
that
that's
bunch.
right. That's right. I think Jeff Jackson's somebody that has tremendous talent, is somebody that a lot of folks are very interested in and have been encouraging him to seriously consider it. And I think, again, as you read off several on the list, and I'll say there are others off the list, I do think that it becomes a very open field if Cooper is out. Right? Nobody's going to run of substance if Cooper runs. If he chooses not to run, it becomes a very open field, and I'm confident that we would have a good, strong candidate. But like I said, we'll see as the governor makes his decision this summer, and that really is, in all due honesty, the starter pistol for this race. It's when he makes the decision, and that's really when the 2026 campaign will begin. Thom Tillis sort of started it, but I think with Cooper's decision, it'll really start.
So is this like traditional summer Labor Day, or like meteorology summer where we could go into September?
Well, December,
I heard a couple weeks
I don't know.
ago.
It's like 65 degrees on Christmas, so that's still summer.
We're all very anxious for it.
Yeah.
Before we take a quick break for audio folks, what do you think about that sort of other potential list of Democrats as a potential opponent?
I think Jeff Jackson's a strong opponent. I think the list gets a lot weaker after Jackson drops out, or if Jackson's not the nominee. But they'll all have a ton of money. They'll all make it a big race. And the reality is we'll have that usual 6 to 10% in the middle who are trying to decide if they want to vote on one issue like Democrats want them to, or if they're going to vote on a bunch of issues such as border security, crime, the economy, things like that. And I feel very confident for Republican chances.
All right. For those listening on audio, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Those of you here on YouTube, stay with us. So, Morgan, what has the last month or so been like as someone that reps Roy Cooper?
I can't imagine.
It's just been hot, man. I'm like
turn the phone off, right?
everybody else. It's 300,000 degrees.
Is it
every day.
wild, though?
Yeah, I mean,
everyone
it
in
is.
D.C. is like, we
It
got to have an
is.
answer right now.
It's literally every day the national press that call to say, okay, so I'm checking in because it's Monday. I'm checking in because it's Tuesday. I'm checking in. There's a ton of, hey, I need to know I'm going on vacation this week. Anything going to happen? I'm going on vacation next week. And that's been coming for the last 6 weeks as everybody's like, I just don't want to miss it. I'm like, me either.
You can respond. You get back to everybody?
Yeah.
Wow, that's nice of you.
I tell them no news today.
Do you remember what that was like, 2022, that Senate race?
Starting around June 21 of 2022. I remember what that's like.
Yeah, the famous Trump endorsement.
Exactly.
What is it like dealing with the national press versus the state press? We're pretty nice here in North Carolina, right?
Yeah. They're, what we see is the competition nationally is much greater. It is everybody. If you're New York Times, if you're Politico, Washington Post, I mean, we could go on and on and on. You're all trying to get the scoop, and so you're a little bit more aggressive than Spectrum or News and Observer or AP or whatever locally, or even any of the TV stations here. But nationally, it's like they live in an environment, and Jonathan will tell you that they're just rumor laden.
Right.
The White House. I mean, excuse me, the Capitol and the White House, but DC in general is like if you were in a retirement home.
Yeah.
Everybody's gossiping
gossip,
all
yeah.
day long. And so everybody has the scoop. And they always call and say, I've heard. I mean, I got a question yesterday. Hey, I hear Cooper's announcing tomorrow, meaning today. Any way we can get him on tonight to preview it? And I'm like,
To preview it.
yeah. No announcement scheduled for tomorrow, but thanks.
But the funny thing about that is they say that with utter sincerity.
Yeah.
And you're like, don't you think I would know if that, I mean, or if you were the guy, don't you think I would have called you by now? I mean, that type thing. But it's not only the tier 1 reporters, though, it's also the tier 2 and the tier 3. And I don't mean quality reporting, but just where they are in their career.
Yeah.
And they're going to be tier 1 next cycle. So you don't want to totally dismiss them. And so you're spending like all this time laying everything out and because no matter how much research they've done, no matter how much gray eminence they have, they don't know North Carolina. Like Morgan knows North Carolina, and like I know North Carolina. And so a lot of education, a lot of spin, but you got to treat everyone kind of the same in a lot of ways because they come back and bite you in the rear end.
What's fascinating though is that those scoops to me are more important for inside the press world than nationally.
They are.
And their bosses than it is with the American people.
100% are.
I've learned to not freak out about that kind of stuff as much as I used to.
You want to get in between Axios and Politico of who gets the scoop. I mean, it is just like, and they will push the envelope to make the scoop a real scoop. We had something just the other day where it was like Roy Cooper leaning to run, and it was the same quote I gave every single reporter.
I saw that too, and I was like, what? But there was nothing in the actual article that led me to believe he was more leaning to run.
Editors and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
So I did have a reporter call me the other day and say, hey, I hear Cooper's announcing this week, and that was like a week or two ago. And I said, I don't think that would be the case. Is there anybody else who might know? Do you not know? And I said,
Cooper.
I said, yeah, I don't. Clearly, I'm not in the loop. So
Do you think
go back to your other sources. And
Is there a chance they make that stuff up, hoping that you'll say something or release something?
I just think the rumor mill in DC is just ridiculous.
It's its
rumor
own
mill and the
ecosystem.
competition. I mean, it's just they
yeah.
I mean, and they're just like every other press corps where it's like they're facing financial challenges.
Yeah.
They got to justify their existence, and in their case, they've all got a big expense account because it's DC and they're traveling and this and that, and it's a lot going on.
Yeah. All right. Well, so do you know when Cooper's gonna? I heard he's gonna announce next week.
Yeah, I'm waiting to be told. I don't know. I'm hoping your source will confirm it for us.
If I hear anything, I'll let you know.
Yeah, if you would.
Okay,
Yeah, Phelps
I'll
will
do
probably know first, so you should ask him.
All right, guys. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Great to be here with you always.
To hear more conversations with people shaping North Carolina and beyond, check out the Tying It Together YouTube channel in the description and hit subscribe to let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, elections, and issues that matter to you.